Welcome to all the delegates who have joined the Old-Fashioned Sourcing webinar in partnership with the USAID Trade Hub, addressing the topic of sustainability. I would like to introduce George McCory, the Deputy Chief of Party, and George has over 25 years experience working in programs aimed at enhancing regional integration and strengthening the region's competitiveness, focusing on trade, investment, policy issues, standards, communication, and project management, including over 15 years senior management experience. George has successfully facilitated the development of African Growth and Opportunity Act utilization strategies for Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, and Zambia. We're very fortunate to have George on the line. And George, welcome, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Neil, for those kind words and for that introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, those that have attended this series of webinars in the past. Welcome. And those who are attending this for the first time, a warm welcome to you too. It's a good thing that we keep having this series of webinars, and I'm hoping that you are finding them worth your while as much as we are. And I also want to thank actually our partner, Messi Frankfurt, for this continued partnership, which I think and hope that it's being of good use to you. Now, as our Nell introduced me, I represent the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub, which is a USAID-funded project based in Pretoria. We operate in 8 of the 16 SADC countries, and the 8 countries led by South Africa and all the other Southern Africa Customs Union members, you already know, that is Eswatini, Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and we also have 3 other countries that we operate in, that is Mozambique, Zambia, and Malawi. So those are the 8 countries. I hope I didn't miss out any. But I always want to make it easy for you to remember, as is shown on the map there. I always want to call them SACU plus 3 other countries. And the 3 other countries are the ones that are not SACU members. Now, our role as the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub, we actually work to increase sustainable economic growth, global export competitiveness, and trade in the region. And we do that through 3 main objectives. The first one being to work with exporters or potential exporters in 7 countries of the 8 countries that I mentioned, which are excluding South Africa. So we identify exporters such as some of you here who have potential or would like to export their products to South Africa. So our objective is mainly aimed at increasing trade between the 7 countries out of the 8 that I mentioned with South Africa. So that's our first objective. Our second objective is to work with those companies in the 7 countries I mentioned to identify their sources of funding or their areas of funding that where they would need to be assisted in terms of funding. And then we identify sources of funding in South Africa, companies that are willing to work with those companies that would require funding, and they are willing to fund those companies in the 7 countries. And the arrangement should be that it should be a South African-based funder who's looking at expanding their business into the region. And when we talk about funding, we are not only looking at debt equity, we are also looking at aspects like technology transfer, where a South African company is looking at exporting technology into the region. Then we have our third objective, which is actually looking at probably combining all those and combining all the 8 countries that I mentioned. And this is where we are looking at countries taking advantage of the African Growth and Opportunity Act opportunities so that they can actually export products that they produce in the region to the US. And we link up potential exporters like we do with South Africa. And this time we're looking at potential exporters in the region exporting to the US to take advantage of the AGOA program. So that is what the project does. And we realize that there are so many of you out there who want to continue to use these opportunities to get information around those areas. And hence, we, in terms of textiles and apparel area, we partnered with Messi Frankfurt to have these series of webinars. And like what Neil highlighted earlier, this particular one is aimed at sustainability. And I hope that you're going to find the speakers today very informative, and you'll be able to take something out of this webinar. With those words, I would like to wish you constructive, fruitful discussions, and I hope to see you again next time when we have another webinar. Please continue to attend these webinars. We feel that they really do provide very good, valuable information. Thank you very much. All the best, and back to you now.
Thank you, George. As always, very, very insightful. And it's good to see you relaxing there in Mauritius or wherever you are. It looks fantastic. And now just quickly to set the tone for the webinar, I would like to hand over to Catherine Prue. She's the Portfolio Director of All Fashion Sourcing. And she's just going to run through a short introduction to the event that's coming up. So Kath, over to you.
Thank you, Neil. And like Neil mentioned, my name is Catherine Prue, and I am the Show Director, Portfolio Director for All Fashion Sourcing. And good afternoon to you all, and thank you for being with us today. Just to give you a brief background on All Fashion Sourcing and what we do, we all know that obviously the world has certainly changed due to the coronavirus that's currently around. And the one thing that is abundantly clear to all of us is that companies are trying to find more cost-effective ways to market their brands. And this is always to a targeted audience of potential buyers. Whilst we know that nothing is quite the same as a face-to-face engagement at a physical exhibition, we've all had to adapt and to meet the current business and consumer needs. We have continued to support the apparel, textile, footwear, leather, and fashion industries during this time in Southern Africa. We are taking All Fashion Sourcing in 2020 onto a virtual event platform. The virtual platform enhances the reach for exhibitors across Africa and across the globe, actually. It's an extremely cost-effective alternative to the traditional exhibition. It has intelligence matchmaking capabilities, which links relevant buyers to sellers. Both visitors and exhibitors will obviously benefit from a massive reduction in other normal physical exhibition costs, including no travel and accommodation fees, as everything can be done from the benefit of your own home. It allows exhibitors to market their products and services in a very cost-effective manner for continuity purposes, and it has lasting value for exhibitors as the platform will remain live for 3 months after our event in November. We've already had over 140 companies sign up to the platform, and we look forward to welcoming you either as a potential exhibitor or a visitor from the 3rd to the 5th of November. So please visit allfashionsourcing.com for more information, or contact any one of our team members who will gladly send you the information or take you through a live demonstration to show you all the functionalities and abilities that the platform has. So thank you again for taking the time to be with us this afternoon, and I really hope you enjoy the panel discussions on sustainable fashion today. Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, Thank you for that. And who thought that virtual would be so much work? Oh my goodness, we thought physical events were difficult, and the virtual world is just another beast. But it's coming together fantastic, Kath, and I think the team is going to deliver something special for the industry, getting those buyers and sellers connected, and making a difference for the broader industry and the sector itself, which is really cool.
Exactly. We can't wait until November to see how it all rolls out.
Cool, man. On that exciting note, then, I would like to introduce you to Cyril Nika. He's the CEO of Imprint Luxury, who will introduce the various speakers, run through the agenda for the day, and host the session on behalf of USA ID Trade Hub and All Fashion Sourcing. And just a quick introduction to Cyril. He's a sought-after fashion consultant. He's a mentor, an influencer. He's often called upon to speak at events or to write prominent international fashion publications. He's a fashion designer by qualification, and he's built an exceptional reputation for his ethical stance on fashion and has become a trailblazer leading the sustainable fashion movement in South Africa. He currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer at Imprint Luxury, and he's a founding member of the Fashion Revolution Cape Town, and he's also the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution South Africa. And above all of that, Cyril is seriously a good guy, always approachable, happy to help anybody. And on that note, Cyril, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Neil, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm going to go straight into sharing my screen because of time. And I'm also going to introduce you to our incredible panelists that we have today. So let me just get into this quickly. Okay. I'm sure that you would agree with me that Africa is so relevant right now, with Teba Magugu winning the LVMH Hennessy Louis Vuitton Prize, Sindisa Khumalo doing phenomenal at the moment, Laduma recently showing at New York Fashion Week, and many other designers on the African continent that are doing incredible things. But what if the world wants what's on the African continent? What if the international luxury market has grown tired of the usual big four? By that we mean Paris, Milan, London, New York. And they want something new. Can it be found in Africa? Africa, with its burst of color and rich texture, beautiful fabric, has come a long way in terms of what we have to offer. Many have come in search of basket weaving techniques. Some have come to learn new print patterns and how to mix these together. Could it be that designers come for something and they leave with so much more? Could it be a sense of identity? Discovering that although the continent of Africa is a developing continent with potential uncertainty, its people hold the key to understanding what brings about a sense of belonging. Could it be that the many fabrics printed in Africa, which tell amazing stories, stories about identity and belonging, offer solace at a time when the world is in flux and people are searching for meaning? Fashion can be a powerful change. It can be a powerful vehicle for change. Not only are designers looking for us for inspiration, many international fashion brands have opened stores in Africa looking to grow their markets. But has this come at a great cost? So my name is Cyril Nika, and I'm the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution South Africa. And it is really exciting to be presenting to you today. Just to give you a little bit about Fashion Revolution, we are designers. We are people from all around the world who make up the fashion industry. We wear clothes, we love clothes, and we love the people who make them. We are designers, we are academics, we are writers, we are business leaders, policymakers, brands, retailers, marketers, producers, makers, workers, and fashion lovers. We are the industry and we are the public. We are the world's citizens, we are you. We're in almost 100 countries worldwide, with Sudan, Zambia, and Russia having recently joined. Our vision We believe in a fashion industry that values people, the environment, creativity, and profit in equal measure. Our mission: we want to unite people and organizations to work together towards radically changing the way our clothes are sourced, produced, and consumed, so that our clothing is made in a clean, safe, and fair way. We believe that collaborating across the whole value chain from farmer to consumer is the only way to transform the industry. Our mission is to bring everyone together to make that happen. This is just a slide in terms of our global reach and in terms of where we are. And fashion revolution is growing. The impact of fast fashion, I'm sure that you would know, trade barriers have softened, which created financial incentives for brands to move their production overseas. This created the trend for cheaper clothes, resulting in cheaper labor. This gave rise to fast fashion. Marketing played a major role, and we as consumers bought more into this cheap clothing. We thought that we were saving money, but we ended up buying more. We were buying lower quality garments. Have you ever heard, "I have nothing to wear," but yet you have a closet full of clothing? Sound familiar? Who Made My Clothes is a famous hashtag that is coined by Fashion Revolution. Basically, what we do with this is we want you to think about your clothes, think about your shoes, think about what you're wearing. Do you know who made them? Do you know the person who made them? Do you know what they were paid? Do you know which company those clothes were made in? And I'm sure you're thinking, do I know the person that made my clothes? That's a little bit far-fetched. Stay with me a little bit. The impact of fast fashion on the people who make our clothes. From a capitalistic perspective, while this is great, with Bangladesh being one of the fastest growing economies in the world, the reality of the system is that it did collapse. In 2013, the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, killing over 1,000 people, injuring thousands more. These were people who make the clothes that we wear every day. 1 in 6 people work in the clothing industry. 80% of them are women. 98% of them are not receiving a living wage. Basically, this is systemic slavery. This is what I speak about. This was the aftermath of the Rana Plaza factory collapse that was locked from the outside, so that when the fire broke out on the inside, people couldn't get out, which meant that people were basically trapped on the inside.
We communicate who we are through clothing. It is fundamentally a part of what we wish to communicate about ourselves. We used to have a system, a fashion system, that has absolutely nothing to do with the fashion industry today. It has been reinvented.
It's based on materialism. The problem is that comes at a really high price. Garment factory collapsed, killing more than 1,000. Clashes between clothes factory workers and riot police in Cambodia.
Last November, 112 people were killed in another major factory fire. 30,000 Chinese workers are doing
Garment workers in Bangladesh were paying the price for cheap clothing.
Well, the promise of globalization was that it was going to be a win-win, that consumers in the rich world would get cheaper goods and people in the poorer parts of the world would get jobs, and that those jobs would give them an opportunity to work their way out of poverty.
This enormous, rapacious industry that is generating so much profit, why is it that it is unable to support millions of its workers properly?
The actual business model is completely unsustainable. Unless you change that model, you can't change anything.
When everything is concentrated on making profits, what you see is that human rights, the environment, workers' rights get lost.
My God, we can do better than this.
Hello. Hello. Yes.
So you would remember me talking about the people who make our clothing. So Fashion Revolution Week really is all about the people that were killed during that Rana Plaza collapse. Over 1,138 people were injured. And every year on the 24th of April or around that time, we have Fashion Revolution Week. And I would encourage you to hop online to fashionrevolution.org, read all about us, and if you can, please sign the manifesto. It's really all about being proactive and taking responsibility. It is a digital campaign. So with COVID, social distancing, you can still use your voice and you can still get involved. Thank you so much. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm literally going to go straight into an incredible panel that we have to talk about our topic for today. So basically with COVID-19, we're fully aware of the state of our nation: food insecurity, job losses, 40% unemployment. In this context, how should we think of clothing? And just to let you know about what we'll be talking about today, we are going to be talking about the business of fashion. We're going to be talking about ethics and clothing for development. We're going to talk about spending money on locally manufactured clothing on repairing. We're going to talk about vertical or regional integration of the fashion industry. We're going to talk about, we're going to give you advice on how to spend money. We're going to talk about sustainable fashion on the African continent. And we are also going to talk about solid and liquid waste. Now, to introduce my panel, I am delighted to talk to three people that are really doing phenomenal things. We have Jackie May. Jackie is the founder of Twig. She has worked in big and medium-sized mainstream media organizations in London and South Africa for more than 25 years. She has held permanent and freelance positions, producing content for print, digital, and television. These positions include the editorialship of South African edition of Marie Claire magazine and the Cape edition of the Times newspaper. In 2018, Jackie founded Twig, an online platform to promote modern sustainable living, for which she creates social media, exhibitions, campaigns, stories, and events. As a cultural role player, Twig's mission is to change behavior and to advance sustainability through creating people and planet-friendly desires and aspirations. Jackie is passionate about supporting the creative economy and a transition into the circular economy. Jackie launched the Twig Sustainable Fashion Awards in 2019. She is the co-founder of the Fashion Lab and the Green Kit. Jackie grew up in the Western Cape and has lived in a small coastal town of Namibia, cosmopolitan Paris, London, Johannesburg. In Cape Town, she takes early morning dips in the Atlantic and long walks along the mountain paths. She lives with her partner and 3 children. Jackie holds an MA in philosophy from the University of London and is currently studying at the Sustainability Institute in Stellenbosch. She is on the steering committee of SA's Mohair Cluster. So welcome to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Cyril.
And then we're also joined by Toki Ho. She is the managing director of Far East Textiles, and she is from the Kingdom of Eswatini. So hello to Swaziland. A self-accomplished businesswoman with a vast experience across numerous industries, including, but not limited to import, export, retail, and manufacturing. Her management approach in every endeavor is result-orientated, and she prides herself in being decisive, being a leader with a proven success in both startup and growth organizations. Over the years, she has further established a vast pool of domestic and international network, contacts, resources that allows for adaptation to constantly changing business environments, while still remaining pragmatic and focused on the organization's strategic goals. Skills and abilities, she's a visionary, she's a leader, and she's a team motivator. Corporate strategy and development specialist, human source management and organization. She's goal-driven with her performance, exceptional problem solver, and decision maker with experience in business analysis, management, budgeting, cash management, cost accounting, strong-minded individual with unsurpassed interpersonal skills, competent multitasker, an enthusiastic communicator. So welcome to you, Toki.
Thanks, Cyril.
And last but certainly by no means least, we have Imzukuzi Mabani. Imzukuzi is a designer from Imprint ZA. Mzikuzi was born and raised in Cape Town. He holds a formal qualification in the form of a Bachelor of Accounting Sciences. He's a highly driven and passionate entrepreneur, self-taught fashion designer, and brand ambassador. Mzikuzi has won numerous entrepreneurship awards, studied product design and development from SABS Design Institute in Pretoria, and advanced business management and entrepreneurship from the Gordon Institute Business Science. He currently sits on the panel of curators for Cape Town College of Fashion and Design. His education, BCom, Business Management and Entrepreneurship, Product Design and Development. His skills are fashion design, fashion styling, photography, relevant experience, fashion stylist and business fashion writer for Imbo magazine, supply chain management, finance for the City of Cape Town, years of Fashion Week, internship at AFI. His inspiration is our roots. Who are we as Africans? Where we are from and where are we going? In music, people, and places. His clothing tells our DNA. It's all about our story. Threads that trend stitches in time. Imprint's clothing DNA is embedded in a simple ethos, our roots. From the ethos, one sees a dialogue between the designer and life. You see childhood memories reincarnated through collection styles. Prints and textiles play a dominant role for both the menswear and womenswear collection. The collections are flamboyant, brave, bold, encourage confidence in the wearer. While certain prints and signature cuts replicate themselves in each collection, Imprint's DNA is also constantly evolving, allowing new styles, refreshed details to birth and flourish as each season comes and goes. So Mzikuzi, welcome and good to have you here. Okay, I don't know if Imzu is here. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into our discussion, and we're going to talk about, I know, Toki, when we spoke over a few days, I know that you are involved in CMT, which is cut, make, and trim, and you employ around 800 women, and you've been in the industry for 18 years. So let's just paint a picture in terms of what COVID has done with your business and what it has meant to you. So if you can just give our listeners just a little bit into what it's meant for you.
Thank you, sir. My name is Toki Ho from the Kingdom of Eswatini. I run a textile factory in Swaziland, in Eswatini. I've been in this industry for 18 years, cut, trim, make. And it's been a wonderful business, I must say, in exporting to the Republic of South Africa. We started 2002 with only 12 people. Today, we are sitting with plus or minus 800 people. So it has been a great growth for us. And textile, something that I love so passionately. But when COVID-19 attacked the whole world, it was something that really struck us so badly. With the number of people it was the biggest blow that we had ever felt in all the years. Looking at the textile in Swaziland, we have about 22 factories that are employing about 22,000 women, that is. So it was really bad for us to be attacked in this manner. On the 27th, when everything closed, factories were shut down because of COVID. Borders into Eswatini shut and we couldn't even trade and nothing was happening. And we then came up with a great idea, meeting with the women, starting up something what we are calling today village factories, where we gathered all the women that were affected in the industry. We started a project that's called Vugani Bomage Project. So with no capital, no money to start the project or start the business to empower these women, we then contributed some secondhand machinery to the village ladies. We then started using the waste fabric, that is the cut leftover fabric that in the past we used to discard and just throw it in away. But now we started a project whereby we were teaching these women how to make something that was so much in demand, which is the face mask. We started producing face masks, and we were preaching and advocating the buy Eswatini, buy your own brand, buy from your people, to try and grow and help the economy of your area, your country, your village, that is. So that happened, and it was quite an exciting program that we started. It started in 3 Tingunlas, and now that is the village. Now it is going through and it's moving around the whole kingdom of Eswatini, which I believe it can be copied and worked in some other countries because it's a brilliant idea. So we are standing proud here and saying industry, textile, that is, there's so much that it can do. And again, we were saying when COVID attacked, we didn't sit back and say, what can we do? But this industry, textile, really made a lot of difference to all people in this part of the world, especially because it was coming up with job creation and empowering the village women to do something for themselves.
Toki, that's incredible. And I think you've answered one of the points that we're going to talk about in terms of waste management and in terms of the offcuts, and what you've been able to do. It was incredible because I got to talk to Toki on last Saturday, and she mentioned the concept of the village to me, and it really stuck in my mind. And one of the things that I wanted to bring about was, we all say this, that the world is a village. And it kind of dawned on me that if we had this mindset, that if we treated where we live as a village, and we treated fashion in the same sort of way. In a village, obviously, you've got to get the elders and the leaders have got to have buy-in to what you do, what you say. And in a village, everybody cares for each other. And we've seen that with COVID. We've seen that at 7 or 6 p.m., 8 p.m., depending where you live, that every day during lockdown, people would applaud all the essential workers, the doctors, the nurses, people that are packing our groceries in stores. And that kind of mentality, if we move it over to the fashion space, if we were as proud of our fashion industry, and if we took care of each other as a village takes care of its people, I think our fashion industry, specifically on the African continent, because of the village mentality, I think it would stand us in good stead in terms of where we're going. I want to move over to Imzukuzi, and I'm also proud to say that I wear a lot of Imprint ZA designs myself. I am a huge supporter and a huge fan of his designs. And Imzu, I know that COVID has also affected you, and I would like you to sort of give a bit of an overview what it's meant as a designer, because we've heard from a CMT perspective, but as a designer and the people that you work with, how has that affected your industry?
Thank you, Cyril, and thank you for the continued support. For Imprint, it hit us, COVID hit us before we actually even went into lockdown. It was the time when it was Fashion Week. We had produced collections. The collection was supposed to be showcased, and that's when we learned that the restrictions, and we couldn't showcase. And for me, the restrictions came on the day of my show. So just imagine all that investment in a campaign that we now can't show because we are thinking of the cost over benefit. And then we're looking at the fact that there's a whole collection that needs to be archived because it can be produced. When you estimate in terms of the revenue that's going to come from it, there was nothing. So I made the decision to archive the collection, and then it meant that everything was on a standstill. When we went into the lockdown, it meant that we can't walk, we can't work. And then it wasn't just about me. Keeping in mind that the business also has people that are being supported by these people working under Imprint. So it meant that a lot of people had to be home and there wasn't money coming in. And in as much as we could stretch what we have, it wasn't enough to sort of like keep people as they were staying at home. So it affected us in a very hard way. There was a time when the mask process came in. It was so exciting because now there was something that we're looking forward to. People were looking into buying masks, but over time it proved to be a defeating exercise, because looking at the fact that for me, I had moved into Joburg, so I had a store in Joburg, having a store in Cape Town. So keeping in mind that whatever we sell needs to be covering all those overheads, because the store in Joburg, we still need to pay rent for, even though we're not there. The production staff in Cape Town still needs to be paid. So it wasn't working at all, to such an extent where I had to figure out how to sort of like work and manage the costs and everything, which meant that I had to reduce from having a full week of production or working to having like 2 days a week. And that was difficult, because in as much as I knew that that was something that was assisting and helping us stay open, it wasn't really practical, because it meant the people, the salaries were cut. No one was able to manage or still pay the expenses that they have. So it was, and it still is in a way, a difficult process. Now we're in level 1, and we're moving into a time where people are more excited about life and are looking into buying more. And we are more optimistic, but we have to still remember that we have a lot of expenses that it's going to take time for us to even come close to recovering. So it's been a devastating process.
For sure. And I think probably that's, one, we can segue into a point here that it's important for people to support local designers, because, you painted the picture of what and how it's affected you. And oftentimes people are like, why should I support? And, what is the benefit? But we can hear, in terms of the value chain that you have, in terms of why it is important. I'm going to move over to Jackie, and we're going to come back to important points that we're going to discuss. But Jackie is also a contributor and a partner to Fashion Revolution South Africa. And Jackie really understands the media really well. And I think this is a good point in terms of also COVID has affected the media in a major way. And Jackie, you've been working on Twig, and you've been building a sustainable platform for quite a while now. And I think never before in our history has it been so more important to sort of talk about positive stories, talk about sustainable stories. But just a little bit of introduction into Twig and why you decided it was time to do a sustainable platform and your role in the media at the moment.
Thanks. That was I'm sorry about that. And I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but there's so many people we've seen who've had to close their businesses. And I think, as you said, Cyril, more than ever, we've got to support our friends, really. As you say, it's our villages, it's our friends. I left mainstream media about 2.5-3 years ago. And at the time, I felt that there was a real need to shift the conversation and to shift attention. I think consumers' attention. So much of what the media does and so much of the advertising that comes into the media space, I mean, not so much now because there isn't very much of that, but is about international brands, creating wants and aspirations for big international brands. And I mean, not only that, I was also very concerned about the kind of fast-paced consumerist behavior that it was feeding. And there was nothing at the time. I mean, 3 years ago, there was nothing like that in South Africa. So Twig was very new in the space. I mean, thankfully, 2.5 years later, things have changed quite radically. I mean, in a very negative and very sad way. So many of our magazines and newspapers have folded, which is a tragedy all around. It's a tragedy for democracy. It's a tragedy for journalism. But in some ways, there's this emergence of something new, which is very exciting. And, you know, for the role, I mean, I suppose I'm a journalist and a bit of an advocacy worker, because I feel incredibly passionate about sustainability and about what fashion and clothing and textile industry can do in a country like ours, where we have an incredibly high unemployment rate. So, you know, if we feel passionate about our fellow citizens, about our fellow makers, the idea of promoting local brands, local and responsible brands, it's well, I mean, it's just incredibly important, and more so now than you know, more so now post-COVID than ever before. But it's that we do want to encourage local, but we also want to encourage local and responsible consumerism.
Absolutely.
My role is very much in line with the SDG 12. So it's promoting conscious consumerism and responsible manufacturing and production, which is very in line with what Fashion Revolution does.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Jackie. And Taki, I want to go back to you in terms of if we talk about the business of fashion, and if we talk about sort of borders. I know that when South Africa's border was closed, I know that that affected your business model, because you do supply clothing to TFG. But in terms of regional, you know, how has it affected you, and what has been the lesson that you've kind of developed within your business model? Taki, your mic is on mute.
Sorry about that, Cyril. Thank you. I just didn't get you for a while there. Please just come again with the question. Sorry about that.
I know that, so South Africa had obviously closed its borders during COVID, and I know that that affected business quite a lot. And I want to bring it into regional, you know, because even though, you know, we're kind of talking about South Africa, but I want to talk about you know, sort of Africa holistically. What has been the lesson for you in terms of sustainability, specifically with the business of fashion, that you've kind of identified now going forward, because what had happened with COVID, and what steps would you be taking in terms of your CMT?
Thanks, Cyril. I must say COVID has taught a lot of things in the region. And if I were to preach and speak to everybody, I would say be responsible for your continent. Let us all try and put things together and work together as Africa, because we had seen that with COVID attacking everyone everywhere in the world, meaning that you have to stand on our own and start supporting each other, see where the gaps are, see what is it that we can do to support each other in terms of creating employment, in terms of helping each other, because we are like a village. I mean, you talk about South Africa, you talk about Eswatini. When borders were closed for us, it really hit us so hard, because it then daunted to us that, look, we are fully dependent on the other side of the border. If it were to be closed for a longer period of time, how were we going to survive in this part of the world? And again, it said to me, Africa or South Africa continent, what are we doing here? We are in textile. We are doing textile in textile, sewing, garments, fashion. What can we do for our business in the region? Can we not support each other? Why I'm saying this, Cyril and the team, is because whenever you walk into any fashion store, what do you see? Made in where? Out of Africa, made coming out of this continent. What can we do to support each other, support this continent? If we were to produce all those things in our countries, I think we can really, really curb all the poverty and all the stuff that you're seeing in our continent. What can we do? Let us stand up, arise, and work with the textile industry and support each other. Just by supporting the village, we'll call it the village factory in our part of the world, but we're saying it can also happen in South Africa. It can also happen in other part of the world, in Malawi, Zambia. Let us do that, see how we can grow and empower each other.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that really sort of goes quite nicely in terms of with Imzu, in terms of, you know, he studied something totally different, and then he self-taught himself in terms of fashion, you know. And Imzu, I really want to talk about that in terms of if we have to talk about spending money on locally manufactured clothing, supporting local designers. I mean, you have been a designer in this space for quite a while, and it hasn't been easy by all means. And if we talk about sustainability, people don't really quite understand why it's important to buy local, support local. Would you kind of share just a little bit about your thoughts on that, in terms as a designer, why you feel it's important, and also keeping in mind, the sustainability angle that we're talking about? Imzu?
Thank you, Cyril. A lot of times people don't understand that, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Cool. A lot of times people don't understand, the consumer doesn't understand that the conversation of sustainability involves them too, because a lot of times when we have the conversation, or when they see the conversation in the media, it's always around better fabric choices. They don't understand that them actually spending on an imprint garment, spending on a local designer means the doors for the designers are kept open. It means I'm able to create sustainable jobs for the people that are working for me. It means that I'm now able to make better choices because I have that consumer that I can rely on. It means I'm able to negotiate at better terms. It gives me power in a way when I know that the consumer is on my side. And that's a lot of times that people doesn't get that they have a voice, but they also have a role to play in making sure that they are a huge part of creating this sustainable movement. And a lot of times people don't also understand that the decision that you make when you're walking into a fast fashion retailer and comparing that retailer in terms of price point to a local designer, it affects us in a huge way. And it also contributes to us not being able to grow to a point where, I remember in one of the conversations that we had, you spoke about me as a local designer being in a point where I'm able to negotiate my own prices, being able to negotiate on input duties and all those things. If we educate the consumer in such a way that they do understand that they're the very core of this movement, and anything that allows me and gives me power to be in a position where I'm able to produce locally at affordable prices, I'm able to negotiate and have all these things. It all comes from the consumer making a conscious decision to buy locally.
For sure. Imzu, I just want to read a comment that you got from Camilla. She says that she loves that. The public can vote with their wallets. So Camilla, thank you so much for that. Jackie,
definitely, thank you.
Jackie, there's a question that's popped up from Heidi, and I'm going to direct the question to you because I know that you have knowledge in this area. And I'm going to read what she says. She says, how are you encouraging purchase of local textiles? I hear you saying support local designers, but we should look at making our purchases as deep as possible, right down to the fiber and yarns, if it is at all possible. So if we can talk a little bit about textiles.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, you'll know this as well, it's really difficult. It's really hard, especially for independent designers, to find quality preferred fibers. We're actually compiling a list and doing this research around this, and it's taking us quite a long time. I mean, how do you find locally grown, locally manufactured cotton? I mean, there are places, but as I said, it's quite tricky to buy small quantities. Maybe Toki knows how to help us here. But, you know, there are amazing places. Mango does organic cotton. Our mohair and our wool products are amazing. But, you know, there's also a comment that I got from a designer. And in fact, it wasn't a designer. It was somebody who works in clothing, in the secondhand clothing market, and said that, you know, buying these fabrics that come from China in its own way is sustainable, because they might not be preferred fibers, but somebody's got to use these made fibers. If they're not going to be used, they're going to end up in a dump somewhere. So, in our shops, our fabric stores in South Africa need to be used. Otherwise, where they're going to go? But I mean, ideally, we want to encourage compostable and recyclable and recycled fibers. I think that's the most important thing to do. But there's very little of it, to be honest, in South Africa, and it's very tricky for our designers to get their hands on small quantities of that.
Absolutely. And also, Heidi, just to let you know, I think one of the biggest issues is import duties on fabric that we have in South Africa, in terms of textiles. That plays a major role. So, we hear you, and fabric to a designer, to a CMT is pivotal to their business. But the problem is so much bigger, and we really do need this addressed from a grassroots level right up to government. And we all need to get involved. And I've got to encourage you to use your voice. Use it on all our platforms, whether you're talking on Fashion Revolution, talking on Twig. We need to create awareness. There is another question, which I'm going to direct to Toki. The question is from Ridwana, and she says, I love what you're all saying about thinking of fashion ecosystem as a village. My question is, what tangible steps can we take to create more efficient supply chain where we can nearshore as much as possible? So Toki, over to you. And just your mic is also off at the moment. Toki, your mic, just to unmute yourself. Toki, just to unmute your mic. Okay, I think we're having a little bit of technical issues. Toki, just your mic, just to unmute your mic. Okay, we can't hear. Hi, Toki, just to unmute your mic, unmute. Okay, so let's just go back to the supply chain in terms of what tangible steps we can take. So I'm going to leave it open to the panel. I know fabric, we're kind of talking about fabric. Jackie, do you want to share a little bit just about what tangible steps we could take to make a more efficient supply chain?
Well, I think that, I mean, I'm just seeing Heidi says she can help us, which would be very interesting. I mean, I know that, if you're in retail, it's different for designers like Mizzou and the designers that we work with, Cyril. But I think there needs to be, it definitely needs to be streamlined. And I think it obviously, the more the designers and the more the understanding of the need and the demand for these fibers and fabrics, the more we can make available those fabrics. And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if for instance, I know lots of designers want to use hemp because it's really a very, very sustainable fabric, even though it isn't locally grown, and there's a long way to go before hemp will be grown for fibers in South Africa. But the Hemporium in Lakeside, Cape Town, has made an arrangement where you can do a collective purchase of meters of hemp, and then you can pay it off as you need it. You don't have to buy the whole roll. So I think maybe using those sorts of arrangements for other fibers, even if it's local, because some of it's expensive. But I think people have to work together. I think I don't know how you find this, Mizzou, but I think designers work in their silos, and I think traditionally there's been a lot of competition, and you hold on to your IP, but maybe those days are sort of behind us now, and we've got to forge a way forward together, because I think that we don't really have time to waste. The faster we get to use fibers and local fibers, the better for everybody, not just not just the planet. But I think it's really important that we do break down those silos. I mean, ideally, I would have maybe people have capacity, but I think other people might have capacity to do it. I would have loved to have had the capacity to do more around this. I get questions all the time from designers. I really do, about where I can get this and where I can get that. And yeah, it's not obvious. The information is not obvious to a lot of people, and especially designers who need this information. And that's why we create a database.
So, Imzu, for yourself, in terms of fabric, how have you found, sort of accessing fabric in terms of your supply chain?
It's definitely difficult. It's like what Jackie says. I feel like what could assist mostly is if there was a sort of like a shared portal where you can access this information. Because currently, I have my own corner, I have my own suppliers. Sadly, none of the people that are actually supplying the fabrics, like the raw part of it, is South African. And it would be beautiful if there was sort of like a way where if I'm, for instance, producing my summer collections, I know that there is a place where I can source my lycras, I can source my chiffons. Like there was a sustainable place there where I know that even the price that I'm paying, it goes into supporting the same ecosystem that I sort of want to be supporting and want to be part of. That's the difficult part. Yeah, and that's the reality that we're in. And another issue is that I think Jackie also touched on it, is that even when you do find sort of that supplier, it's difficult to sort of negotiate rates because you are the only one who's buying that, or you are the only one who's buying from them. And the reality is that there's power in numbers. If there's a bigger base of designers that are being supplied by a certain mill in Cape Town, for instance, it means we're able to negotiate. They're producing bigger quantities, they're able to cover their cost in the units that we are buying as the collective of designers.
Yeah. Well, I think that really crystallizes. There's power in numbers. I think we've heard about the fact that it takes a village. We've heard that it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to get ready, whether it's a personality. We've heard all of these things thrown out. I need to bring it to a close, sadly, because we're on 4 o'clock right now. And I think there's so much that we could really talk about, and this conversation can go on for quite a bit. And there's quite a lot of comments that are coming through. I just want to read out one of them from Elise. She says, the solution for having shared solutions and power of negotiation in terms of supply chain wouldn't be sustainable council. My brand would adhere. So I think, there's a lot, the councils, fashion councils, organizations like Twig, Fashion Revolution. This is the reason why all of these voices are joining forces, coming together, because we do know that fashion is a problem. Sustainability is an issue that we need to target. And I always say this, if you care about human rights, if you care about ethical issues, if you care about the planet, you need to look no further than the clothes on your back, and that's really where it's all at. So thank you to my incredible panel. I think we have a little bit of technical issues with Toki because of sound issues, but to Toki, to Jackie, and to Imzu, thank you so much. To Messe Frankfurt, thank you, and to Neil, I'm gonna hand back to you because Neil's got some exciting information about the next webinar, and to also talk to us about what's happening on the rest of the continent.
Thank you so much, Cyril, and thank you, panel. That was really insightful and good conversation there. So thank you very, very much. I just want to quickly, on your screen, to everybody there, if you want to get hold of the USAID Trade Hub, the team, are the country representatives for you. We will also be sharing this, the presentation on our website soon. So if you want to go through the recording again or get these details, you are most welcome to do so. That will be up in the next day or two. And then please join us for the next webinar that we're hosting. And it's what US buyers look for in products imported into America. and that's going to happen on the 29th of September, same time. So please join us for that. And then once again, from All Fashion Sourcing and the USAID Trade Hub, thank you for joining us today. I hope it was beneficial. I certainly enjoyed the session. And again, thank you to all the panelists. We are very grateful for your time and very appreciative. Enjoy your day further, and we see you on the 29th of September.